Hey guys, we are back home in Arkansas.
Yep.
And the good weather followed us here. And I know we took a bigger break than we expected, but that's just the way it goes. And we're not going to be upset about it, are we, Paul?
We're trying to find our way.
Yeah.
We're trying not to be just like all the other functional medicine practices spewing stuff. So we'll come up with something interesting, I promise.
No, we have lots of things to talk about. It's just trying to group it in a way that makes sense. Because the topics are basically endless for us. But now we're back home. We're going to get in our groove again because we've been living like gypsies all summer long. And it's hard to do a podcast when you're living like gypsies.
Absolutely.
So no longer gypsies for us. And today we're going to talk about the relationship between your child's behavior and what they're eating. And because there is a huge connection between the diet and behavior. And we're going to delve into that after we listen to the Hellroys.
I don't take nothing that a doctor don't prescribe. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't smoke no bud, man. I don't do no drugs, man. It angers up that blood, man. So I don't do no
All right.
drugs.
So before we get started, you know I got to do. This content is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice or to take the place of medical advice or treatment from a personal physician. And that piece of paper is pretty dusty. And we've got cobwebs on our equipment. That's so sad. All right. Okay. So, I wanted to talk about this particular topic because in my practice, I've seen the transformation in children after you clean up their diet.
Yep.
And when I go out into the public or if I'm with my niece and nephew and around their friends, it is quite obvious that what they're eating is impacting their behavior.
Absolutely.
And, I see and I have friends and just, other acquaintances that, complain about how bad their kids are behaving and they won't do what they say and they're not doing good in school and just acting like little hellions. And at the same time, I'm looking at their children and they're eating, peanut M&Ms and drinking a Dr. Pepper. Mm-hmm. And that is not fair to the child. You're constantly getting on to them, asking them, why are you acting like that? But you're feeding them poison.
Right. And the excuse you often get is that, well, they just won't eat anything else.
Well, that's a lie.
I know it's a lie because I use my brothers as an example. I have my three brothers all have children. I'm the only one that does not. And two of them, their kids ate horribly, and now their kids eat horribly. But my oldest brother, Bill, he fed his kids properly. What's the difference? It just is the way they presented things, the way they did not allow the other stuff. It's an easy fix to give them a Coke because they're screaming. It's a short-term fix.
Well, that's what they want, and it gets them to shut up. So you just let them have it, And you're not doing your child any favors if you're literally feeding them poison. And I see, and I'm looking around and I'm observing. I'm going to places, whether it's sporting games or birthday parties, celebrations, wherever there's a bunch of kids around, and I'm watching not only what the adults are eating, but what the children are eating, and then how they're behaving and how they're having, breakdowns and just getting angry really easily and getting into fights and talking back and I'm not saying that's every kid, but it's a lot of kids out there. That's why we have this ADD, ADHD, epidemic. We've got a lot of behavior issues, and I'm telling you, a lot of it is directly related to what they are eating and the impact of what they're eating is having on their gut health.
I think when you allow a child, when you engage them in a conversation, I've seen this with Piper. She actually understands that.
And Piper is the daughter of my best friend.
She actually understands that when she ingests that, she's going to have issues. The sugar, she understands it. She really understands the blue dye. She still wants the sugar because she's addicted to it, But it's amazing that a child is cognizant of, if I eat this, I'm going to have a problem. And that's a good first step.
And that's what happens a lot when you start going down this journey of making changes in your child's diet and limiting their exposure to things that we know just aren't good for them. And then when they eat it again, they can feel it. Mm-hmm. And then they start making that connection. But you have to remove it for them to even understand the difference that it's making.
And explain it to them.
Yeah. And so, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to understand what we talk about, or what foods we were referring to, because it's not really food. Mm-hmm. It's processed junk that you're giving your kids, and it's literally poison to them.
And it's also bathing their taste buds to make them acclimated to fat, sugar, salt.
Yeah.
So that's what they're used to, therefore that's what it wants.
So, so what is it exactly in these foods that is contributing to their bad behavior, and kind of how is that happening? And the first one that I see, of course, is sugar. These kids are eating way, way too much sugar. It's in everything. They're drinking Cokes, juices. Everybody wants to think that juice is some type of healthy thing. No, you don't need to be drinking juice. You need to be eating the fruit. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan of fruit juices. There's just way, way too much sugar in those things. And so the kids are consuming a lot of sugar and just your obvious, your sweets, your candy, pies, cakes, cookies, colas. But it's also, they're getting it from simple carbs, whether it's through crackers, bread, rice, potatoes. Of course the kids love that, and I eat that stuff too, but sometimes it occupies their entire plate. Mm-hmm. Macaroni and cheese. What kid doesn't like that? There's nothing good about macaroni and cheese.
I think a lot of people...
At least the stuff that people are eating,
I don't think a lot of people understand how quickly a simple carb, gets converted to sugar. And
to glucose.
To glucose. Yeah. That I still remember it was second grade, and our teacher had us put a cracker in our mouth. And she says, hold it there. And lo and behold, within about 15 seconds, it was intensely sweet. Mm-hmm. That's just the enzymic and the action in our mouth to break it down.
Amylase.
The amylase to break it down that quickly. It stuck with me all these years later that, wow, that is sugar.
And that's what comprises most of the diets kids are consuming these days. The school lunches, oh my gosh. It is terrible. I mean, we're literally making kids sick. We're impacting their behavior. Then they're getting diagnosed with ADHD by their teachers or somebody, mm-hmm. And then they're getting put on meds because basically, and a lot of this could be avoided just by diet changes alone. And I have seen it in my practice when these types of children come to us. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of kids that will come, with whether it's some type of skin issue or some type of behavior issue, and they often occur together.
Right.
Okay, because that's just one sign of immune dysregulation is behavior. Nobody ever thinks of it in that terms, as behavior being some type of immune dysregulation and not just this kid that doesn't want to mind.
Exactly. And I think also you need to point out that it's not just the taste bud receptors that are making them crave the sugar. We talk a lot about this when we do our GI talks, that the actual bacteria in your gut is communicating to your brain.
Yes.
And is saying, I want sugar. There's a direct communication path through your vagus nerve going up saying, hey, I'm a bacteria down here. This is what I like. I'm prominent down here. Mm-hmm. Give it to me. And your child's not going to be able to resist that.
Adults can't even resist it. We have got a sugar addiction epidemic in the country.
And it's physiological. I mean, your body is telling you you're craving it.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's, and when your diet is full of sugar and carbs, it's going to cause dysbiosis. You're going to have a lot more yeast growing in there that you shouldn't. I mean, some yeast is good. We have to have it. But when it grows out of control, it's a problem. And it's very toxic. And it causes a lot of immune dysregulation in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. And, there is this, and I know a lot of you have heard it, the gut-brain connection is very real. And it's your brain is communicating with your GI tract, and the microbes that reside there are communicating through the vagus nerve and other modalities and the metabolites and things that they produce to communicate with your brain. And so, you've got to get your kids off the sugar. And and if you just jerk it away all at once, it might backfire on you.
Because of the gut. Yeah.
Because of the gut issues. Because when those yeast don't get the preferred fuel source that they like, which is sugar, they die off. And the die-off can be pretty significant, or the symptoms associated with that, if you have a significant case of yeast overgrowth, which a lot of people are walking around with right now. And so, anyway, that's just something to consider. So the sugar, we know, is an issue, and that should not be anything new to you, okay? Right. The other things, the additives and preservatives and the food dyes, these are not good either. Food dyes, and I've talked about this on social media, we know interfere with enzymatic activity within the GI tract. And so when you don't break down the foods like you should, because you're interfering with the enzymes that are responsible for that, you're going to have issues in the GI tract. Undigested food in certain parts of your gut is not good, and it's going to cause inflammation. And that inflammation is not going to just stay there in the GI tract. It's going to impact everything, including your brain and your behavior.
Mm-hmm. I mean, okay. It's amazing the dyes and how quickly they react.
And a lot of parents have picked up on that. Mm-hmm. They when my kid eats red dye, he turns into a demon. And I have seen this play out in my own niece and nephew. And we're starting to make some changes. Getting the whole family on the program, though, has been proven to be pretty difficult. And
I think that's I'm sure a lot of parents out there are saying, well, you just don't understand. And we don't have kids. I get it.
Oh, I've been around enough kids to know.
But I do understand that, step one is not having it around the house.
But look how we were raised,
I know. We didn't have it around the house. We got one box of junk cereal a month, and we would eat it within 15 minutes. All four boys would attack it. And we knew that. It's like, eat it now or you won't get it. But I know a lot of parents are thinking, well, if I controlled it at home, they're still going to get the junk at school because the school lunches are so bad. And if I send them with the lunch, they're going to trade it or they're going to do something. I know how kids are. But
that's no reason not to try at home.
Right, but it's also the craving that you're talking about. Your kid will, if you can break this, you may have to choose a summer break where you do have control. Don't do this beginning of the school year because you're right. They're going to up in the cart when they go to school. So you have to choose a time when you can control it. It's going to take about 60 days to break this cycle, and you have to have a controlled environment. You can have the stuff in your house. You cannot allow them to get it elsewhere. And then once that gut bacteria starts to die off, that's going to be one. The bitter receptors, I think we should go over that a little bit.
Okay, we can go ahead and go over that now.
That I know kids, they don't like this. My brother Joe used to say his kids would only eat chicken nuggets. It's like, well, you acclimated them. He goes, you just don't understand that they'll go crazy if I don't. It's like, well, how long have you ever pushed this? Asked the same question to my brother Billy. He goes, oh, I just don't offer it. Right. And eventually so it's a point of, are you willing to fight them? Because it is going to be a battle and you have to be persistent, but you're working against their gut bacteria, which you can cure in 60 days. The bitter receptor is a little bit more difficult.
Everybody, kids supposedly have more bitter receptors initially, starting out in life. And
old people only have sweet receptors. Yeah, that's why old people like ice cream.
Yeah, and supposedly, that's how it goes throughout life. But I know lots of kids who eat vegetables. So I don't, yes, some of us are super tasters.
Right.
For certain things, but
you're a super taster, and you ate vegetables.
Well, so I don't know that I'm a super taster. I eat vegetables. There's really not too many vegetables that I don't like. The only thing I don't like is cilantro.
I can have one leaf of cilantro in a big stew, and you'll find it. It's amazing.
Well, but that doesn't mean I'm a super taster. That just means I don't like cilantro.
No, it's amazing you can discern it.
So yeah, so the whole, kids don't like bitter foods. Well, they might be a little more adverse to that, but I've seen lots of kids who eat their vegetables, okay? Right. Because their parents are doing a good job of offering it to them multiple times.
What is the number that we've heard?
Supposedly, it takes 10 times.
Minimum.
Well, it can take up to 10 times before you're, offering a different food to a child before they start, getting used to it and eating it, all right?
And perhaps mix it in with other things to begin with. There was Seinfeld's wife did a cookbook called Deceptive Nutrition, but it was recipes for sneaking into smoothies.
That's a great way to sneak stuff in, is in smoothies.
And you can get cauliflower into a burger and they'll never know it. You can get cauliflower into a pasta dish and they'll never know it.
But I want kids to know it.
Well,
they need to understand that this food is good for them. We don't want a college kid still having issues with cauliflower.
Well, influence helps. I mean, kids are more likely to eat spinach because of Popeye back when I was growing up. It's like, oh, Popeye. So it's the positive influence. If the kids are like, if the parents are going, I love this, it helps.
Yeah, and the parents, you guys are going to have to get on board too.
Mm-hmm.
Because they see what you do and you know this, and they emulate what you do. So if you want your kids to eat healthy and you want their behavior to be better, then you're going to have to probably do the same thing.
I think one good friend would be butter. Grass-fed butter is an excellent food. Don't be shy away from it.
Butter's good, guys.
But if you put butter on the broccoli, it helps a lot with a kid.
Right.
Let's work with them. Don't just do steamed broccoli and put it there.
And a lot of people will cover everything in cheese, and that's not necessarily a good thing either.
No, because it's low quality.
Well, it's usually low quality cheese, and here's a big kicker. So let's just say you cleaned up your kid's diet, okay? That you got rid of the processed foods. You started feeding them more vegetables, and everybody wants, I'm giving whole wheat bread, and you're giving them cheese and dairy because you were told that that's a good thing to do, right? Well, food intolerances food intolerances and sensitivities are real.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them in a lot of children. So you have to, and I think everybody should do this, especially if you have a child that is having behavioral issues, not doing well in school, you have to rule these things out.
Mm-hmm.
Children who have ADD, ADHD are, some people say, 7 times more likely to have a food sensitivity. And so you have to rule that out. And so you can have a food sensitivity or intolerance to anything.
Right.
But the most common ones, and we've gone over this multiple times, is, wheat, gluten, dairy, corn, soy, eggs, beans and legumes,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes nuts. Okay, those are the most common ones. But your child can have an issue with any food, and it has to be ruled out. And where we see, I see wheat, gluten, and dairy being the biggest ones for most kids.
But going back to what you said earlier about the child's gut biota being messed up by having so much simple carbs and sugar, you cannot do a reintroduction diet to find out these food intolerances until their GI tract is healed.
Yeah, and yes, and an elimination reintroduction diet is how you rule out these sensitivities and intolerances. And then there's a component, the reintroduction phase. You can't start reintroducing these foods back into their diet to see if they have a problem on a gut that's still, quote, leaky and inflamed, because
right.
You're going to get false positives. So, that's why we do ours the way we do, our reintroduction and elimination diet. I said that backwards, but...
It's the ability to heal the gut while you're doing the elimination. And then once the GI tract is healed, that's our dog. Once the GI tract is healed, then you do the reintroduction. That's a big mistake that most people make. Whole30 cleans up your diet, kind of, but then they're not
addressing the sensitivities and intolerance issue at all, or gut health.
But
that goes a long way. Cleaning up the diet
mm-hmm.
helps a lot of people, but there's still a lot of people it doesn't help.
Right.
Because of the food sensitivity issues and intolerances, and just some dysbiosis, bad gut health for other reasons other than food,
mm-hmm.
which our program addresses all of the reasons that are all the things that it could possibly be mediating inflammation in your GI tract, because we know that it's not just about food. Food is a big one, but there's other things that impact that as well. And I will tell you that when you, for children who eat a lot of wheat and dairy and have sensitivities to them, and when you remove those things, you can have true withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
because these the gluten and the casein, they almost act like some type of they act like opiates in some of these kids. And when you remove, and they have certain names, and I can't recall the names right now. I should have looked those up before we did this. But when you remove those foods, it's almost like removing an opiate, and then they have withdrawals, and their behavior can even get worse
Right.
upon removal. And so these are things that you need to keep in mind if you want to go down this path, and
Just to stay the course.
you stay the course, hang in there. But know that is something very real that can happen when you remove those things from their diet.
And that's on top of the negative effects of the die-off from the candida and the bad bacteria, which
Right.
is another negative to how they're feeling. So the poor little guy is going to be going through a tough one. But the beautiful thing is, and you always say this, children are your favorite patients because they're not that screwed up yet, or they're not near as screwed up as an adult. I mean,
No, they're not. They're not on birth control pills and statins, and they haven't taken Well, some of them have taken a lot of antibiotics because they have, signs of immune dysregulation from poor gut health.
Right.
And that's a big thing. That's a vicious cycle to get into.
Yeah, Johnny's not supposed to get 3 strep throats.
Yeah, if your child is always sick, getting strep throat or getting the flu, or has eczema and psoriasis, isn't acting right. Big red flags,
Ding,
people.
ding, ding.
Big and giving those kids antibiotics every time they get sick is only making matters worse. Those antibiotics are killing off your gut. They're impacting your gut flora, often in very negative ways. And remember the gut, the bacteria that reside in your GI tract are responsible, have a big role to play in your immune health. Mm-hmm. So you got to keep those microbes healthy and happy and thriving. And antibiotics is not going to do that. So instead of giving them another round of antibiotics, and I know that, sometimes you have to have this for strep throat, you need to really okay, what is going on? What is causing my child to get these repeated strep throat infections and the flu and the sniffles and eczema and psoriasis? Okay, there's something going on there. And you need, and you have to address gut health first and foremost, and all the things that is impacting that.
And that's why we also want you to do it during a time like the summer when you have control of the child, because as you mentioned earlier, it's not just food, it's sleep, it's stress, it's everything that's going on in their body, and you need to create the best situation you can to get them through this. And if you need some empathy, both of our health coaches they're both mothers. Mm-hmm. Annie's a mother times 5.
Of 6.
6, so she really gets it. Hannah's a new mother, but
But she has food sensitivities,
Mm-hmm.
and so does her sister, and so she understands the role that those play in your health.
Right. So a lot of times you will need help getting through this, and our health coaches are very reasonable, and it's a great way of getting from point A to point B, utilizing them to help you change your kid's diet, behavior, all
And
this.
I was one of these kids, okay? And so, as a child, the behavior issue is a warning sign. Something is going wrong with the child. And yeah, it could be discipline. It could be a lot of different, social issues going on there too. But often it's not. It's, directly their environment, okay? And diet is a big part of that. I was one of those children. But I was hyperactive. I was told I could climb the walls.
Your mother says you were awful.
Yeah, they said I was awful. I was a great child, a loving child, but very, very hyper. And at the same time of my hyperactivity, I had repeated ear infections, had horrible allergies. My eyes would swell shut when I would go outside and play sometimes. We had to get rid of my poodle because I was allergic. He'd go outside and come back in, and my eyes would swell shut. And then, then that progressed to I was having a lot of leg pain, and then that developed into acne as a teenager, depression, anxiety. And all of this was because of poor gut health and food sensitivities I did not know I had.
Right.
You know, I was eating wheat. I was eating eggs. I was eating all kinds of stuff because, we were told, that stuff was healthy. But I had an issue with it. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s until I realized I had an issue.
Well, I think that's a good point. Not all food sensitivities, we've talked a lot about bad foods like food dyes and sugars, but there are some good foods that could be causing your child's problem. So that's why we talk about elimination reintroduction. It's the elimination of these poor foods in order to get a good results.
Right.
But it could be something good for you, like eggs for you. Mm-hmm. Great for me, bad for you.
Me, yeah.
And that's just, sometimes it happens.
And I remember, one of my favorite breakfast foods was scrambled egg sandwiches. Mm-hmm. So I was eating 2 eggs and 2 pieces of toast, and then wondered why I was having such horrible GI issues. The constipation was horrible. Mm-hmm. Most of my, even I had it as a child. I remember having to get, sorry to have to go here, but enemas as a child. And those should have all been warning flags for my physician, but my physician was never taught about this.
Because it cascades down. I mean, once you have a bad GI tract, your enzyme activity starts decreasing, correct?
Well, everything is messed up.
Because okay,
the brush border it's probably, impacted, so it's not making enzymes like it should. There's so much that can go wrong in a variety of ways in the GI tract when you're just putting basically poison into it. Mm-hmm. And then when you throw in, we've got a lot more modern day problems now than we did back then.
Right.
Especially with the blue lights and the sleep issues and the smartphones and the tablets, and kids are on them all night, like in the bed with this blue light, just bathing their face, and it's 10:30 at night and the kids are on iPads when they should be asleep.
It's the newest babysitter.
It really has become a babysitter, and we need to have some serious discussions about limiting time on these computer screens.
I mean, we're seeing
and now it's going to get worse because everybody's doing virtual schooling.
Well, and the shape of the neck is changing in some children because of this
text neck.
Yeah, the text neck. And
I saw people in the ER have teenagers with neck pain, and the whole time I'm talking to their parents and trying to talk to the child, they're in the corner on their phone in the ER exam room on their phone, and I'm like, well.
And it's an addiction also.
Yeah. Definitely. They make that stuff addictive.
Yeah, it's like a slot machine.
So anyway, back to, gut health and your behavior, your child's behavior. It is something, and if you have a child who's struggling in school and is just having temper tantrums and mental breakdowns and throwing fits, you have got to address gut health. And again, I can think of kids that we've seen in my practice who have just made, complete 180s in their behavior and have seen their school, their grades and everything just improve significantly after making very minor changes, really, in their diet.
The most successful ones are the ones where the parents are involving the kids, and the
whole family is on the same page.
And they start, as we mentioned earlier, about Piper understanding that sugar and blue dyes caused her problems. She still wants the sugar, but she avoids the blue dyes at least. By involving her, she's cognizant of what's going on. They don't want to be ill-behaved. I think a lot of kids are embarrassed when they ill-behave, but they just double down.
They can't control it.
No, they cannot control themselves. My 3 brothers are all Irish twins. They're 12 months apart. Poor mom. But then there was a 4-year break for me. So I was raised a little bit differently. They're picky eaters. I think mom and dad were so busy, they were just throwing stuff on the table. They were trying their best. By the time I came along, I spent an inordinate amount of time with my mother. And I have the least picky eater ever. But I emulated everything she did. I helped her cook. I always thought it was so interesting. By involving me in the cooking, I'm going to eat whatever mom eats. I mean, we ate bizarre things, cow tongue, lots of organ meat. Mom's a country girl. But it was that involvement that made me such a good eater, and my brothers are not so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, my mom was, we ate a lot out of my dad always had a garden. We ate a lot out of the garden. My extended family, a lot of them raised in rural areas, had gardens. So we were just accustomed to eating that way. And my mom did not have any problem with you going to bed hungry if you did not eat what was on the table. And a lot of, I hear this, well, my kid they won't eat. And y'all are scared that they're going to get hungry. I promise you, when they get hungry, they will eat what's in front of them.
Or at least be a lot more open to it.
Yeah, or there'll be a lot more open to it. So let's not let them win the battle, when it comes to that.
You mentioned the gardening, and that
Because it can be a battle at first, but it's a battle worth having and a battle worth winning. We're talking about their health and
Their life.
Their life, exactly. And if you get it now, they're going to have. If you get a grasp of it now and just get it over with now, they will go on to have much healthier and happier lives that are much better quality.
and successful. If you're a poor student because of diet, you're not going to get into a good college. You're not going to go.
Well, you're not going to reach your potential.
No, you're not.
And for me, fortunately, I was still able to do good in school, and sometimes I wonder if couldn't have done better.
Right.
And wonder if I could still have my colon. I really miss my colon.
I mean, folks,
It's caused a lot of problems for me.
that's a good example of how severe food allergies can be. They had
Not allergies, it was sensitivity.
Sensitivities.
Allergies are a whole different thing.
food sensitivities that you had to have the majority of your.
Oh my gosh, Leon has decided to weed eat
All right.
right now.
So we're going to finish up pretty quickly. I want to go to the gardening real quick because that's a good example of involving the child. I think that's one of the reasons I loved vegetables. And why I still garden.
Yeah, I helped my dad in the garden.
Yeah, when you grow broccoli, you're a lot more likely to eat it. If you cook something, you're proud of it. Our niece Emily, when we made marinara that night, she couldn't wait to eat it.
I know.
It's because he was involved in the process. This is why you have to choose the summer when you have time to do things with them. You can garden with them. You can cook with them. I'm not saying it's easy. I don't have the kids, but I have seen the difference with my brothers. So identical genetics, 1 out of 3 has kids that are super healthy and great eaters, and they're doing what we talked about. The other 2, not so much. And, the kids have turned out all right, but they've had issues.
Right.
ADD, these type things.
Yes.
They always mention it's like, we know the genetics are the same, so why are these kids different? The only commonality is the difference in diet.
It's a big problem. So to recap, and we're not going to, keep beating a dead horse here, but if you have a child who, like I said, seems to be having attention issues, not doing well in school, having breakdowns, temper tantrums, you've got to address gut health. And if you're going to address gut health, you might as well rule out food sensitivities and intolerances while you're doing it. You can rehab the gut and see if they have any of these sensitivities and intolerances in 60 days. Okay, that's 2 months. That will fly by. And if you can do that and get your child's gut health back on track, you will see a transformation.
Yes.
And if you don't, then we've got some other things going on that should be addressed. Now, this is just the food part of the environmental exposures that could be contributing to your child's behavior issues and poor gut health. You also have to address the other things too. Toxin exposures, sleep. Sleep is a big one. Screen time, that impacts that sleep. Activity, sunshine exposure, getting them outside. Those things have to be addressed as well. Okay?
Another good reason to do this in the summer because, at school they have all kinds of stresses on their body. Emotional, there's, how school is. It can be tough for some kids.
But might not be a bad time either because there's a schedule there.
Right.
In the summertime, there's a little less schedule, but it varies for every family. So you've just got to find a time when you expect the least, the least amount of distraction, and that's when you go for it. For some of you, it might be in the summer. For some of you, it might be during the school year. Now that a lot of you have your kids at home now, doing virtual school, this might be a great opportunity for you to do this.
Right, because you're able to the school lunches and the whole it just
Good
it's the
grief!
There's a-
The school lunches are pitiful.
brought to you by the USDA.
Pitiful.
It's awful.
It's literally contributing to poor school performance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the issues surrounding that and the answers are complex and complicated, but we've got to start doing something about it.
And the first step is sugar and simple carbs.
Yeah.
That's the very first step.
Get rid of the processed foods
Completely.
completely.
No Ritz crackers.
Don't buy it. Don't bring it in the house. Don't bring the Cokes in the house. Let them have water. There's nothing, if you make sure your water's not full of fluoride and lead and everything else, you can get a filter for that to get rid of it. But there's nothing wrong with water, people. Mm-hmm. If your kid's thirsty, trust me, they're going to drink the water.
Lead by example.
We don't even keep colas in this house, ever. Sometimes we might get one of the bottled Mexican Cokes.
Yeah, because it has sugar.
That's a treat because it has cane sugar in it. But it's still not great for us, but we don't do it that often.
Yeah, no sugar is better than that. Only slightly
And nobody's
better.
perfect, okay? If you can clean your kid's diet up 80%, good for you. That's great. We still have to be humans, but the 80% rule does not apply to food sensitivities and intolerances.
No.
You've got to be 100% on that, because for some kids, all it takes is, a couple of bites of whole wheat bread to just throw them off. Mm-hmm. And then you've got that inflammation that could be present up to 3 months.
So clean up the diet first, then do the reintroduction, and good luck. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's not. We're not saying it's easy. We're not.
And you can in your child. We have something called the Total Gut Job Program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we can tailor that for your child.
Right.
Many of our child patients have used this program successfully.
And it's good when the parents go through it also, because most of you, if your kid has a gut issue, there's a good chance you
do too. And they got that food sensitivity and intolerance from either you or your husband.
Yep.
So anyway, if you have questions or concerns about this and you're interested in where to start and how to address gut health and rule out these sensitivities and intolerances, contact us. Mm-hmm. We can help you. You could try it on your own. Good luck. It's going to take a lot of research on your part.
But this is where the health coaches
And this is where our health coaches shine. They can help you. You don't need to see me. A health coach, one of our health coaches, would serve you and your child very well, and they are very capable of handling this.
They will help you with dietary workarounds. They will help explain the hurdles that are coming up. They've been through it. They've been helping people day in and day out for years. So they get it. They have kids, unlike us. So for you that are saying we don't understand, well, maybe we don't directly, but we see that the results that people who follow this advice.
Trust me, I understand. I'm going to have to deal with some teenagers this weekend. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're going to be requesting to go eat some junk somewhere. And so, Aunt Amy's always got to be the bad guy.
Yes.
In fact, when they come to my house, they make my mother go to the grocery store to get them snacks because Aunt Amy doesn't have anything good to eat.
No, I'll try to give them, good yogurt, and they want the crap yogurt.
They want the stuff full of sugar.
Yep.
So anyway, we're still working on that. They're not my children, so I don't really have that much control. Bless my mother's heart, she has done an excellent job when they are at Mimi's. She's doing her best to pick the best things possible. Of course, all they have is Walmart to shop at, so that's kind of tough too.
Makes it tougher.
But it's still possible. All right, it's still possible. Okay. Anyway, again. If you have questions or concerns, reach out to us. If you're not already following us on Facebook, please do so. Amy Beard MD. We're also on Instagram, and our podcast.
If you're listening to this, you know
what our podcast is. But you can also watch us on YouTube under Amy Beard MD,
mm-hmm.
and we have a tiny following on Instagram for Self Care is the New Healthcare.
That's the Twitter.
That's Twitter, right? Sorry.
That's tiny.
Twitter is we just kind of don't do much with Twitter. It's a very toxic place, but all of these social media platforms have become kind of toxic in their own right.
Yeah, Instagram, you have a lot of followers.
Not a lot, but I've got some.
A few thousand.
Yeah. So it's, I don't. That's not my goal. Is to like acquire a bunch of social media followers.
I want followers who want to listen.
Yeah. I mean, that's not what I set out to do. I'm just trying to get the word out, and it's great if my social media following, increases, because that means more people are going to have access to what I feel they need to be hearing.
Yeah, word of mouth is what helps us the most. Folks, we appreciate you.
Yes, we do. And please, and we're going to be, the next time that our next podcast, we're going to go over budget-friendly, healthy meals for your children.
I can cook on the cheap, folks.
You can eat healthy, cheap. And we're going to show you and talk about how you can do that.
Yep.
All right. See you later, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I don't take nothing that a doctor don't prescribe. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't smoke no bud, man. I don't do no drugs, man. It angers up that blood, man, so I don't do no drugs. I just take Paxil, Xanax, Zoloft, Flomax, morphine, Valtrex, Flonase, Plavix, codeine, Zyrtec, Zoma, Zantac, Ultram, Zocor, Zipro, Prozac, dopamine, Demerol, Lexapro, Tylenol, Vicodin, Lyrica,